Welcome back. Meeting India's 12th five-year plan target that envisages a doubling of infrastructure spending from $500 billion to $1 trillion is indeed a daunting task in the current economic environment, especially considering at least 50% is expected to come from the private sector. Economies in the Asian region, including India, are predicted to have moderate growth, partly due to sluggish recovery forecasts for major industrial economies. But even for this moderated growth to be realized, massive investment in infrastructure are inescapable. To talk in this in detail, we have with us Mr. Amitabh Mundhra, Director, Simplex Infrastructure. Mr. Mundhra, there is a glaring infrastructure deficit in India, which policymakers intend to address by facilitating public and private investment worth $1 trillion in the 12th five-year plan. Seeing the present economic condition, does it look achievable?
I think the necessity is there, but I don't think it will happen because there are too many implementation hurdles in the way, and I believe it's a good wish list to have. But in terms of implementation, it's going to be a very uphill task. So I'm a little skeptical about this getting implemented.
What are the major challenges in making PPP model a success?
I think the third P needs a lot of work. I think when you say partnership, what does it mean? How do you define partnership? What kind of partnership is it? Is it fair weather partnership? Or is it a partnership that will weather storms? I think those are the questions which need to be addressed. I don't see PP and the third P actually coming into a partnership mode. It's more like a tender-led business. You tender out a particular concession as you would do a tender for any EPC project. That you don't call partnership. And so therefore, I think I have a big question mark on calling these projects PPP projects. They are at best a BOT project, or the different various forms, and so therefore this whole connotation of PPP is slightly under a question mark because of the third P.
Private participants advocate that to enhance the private participation, risk should be distributed and roles and responsibilities and policies should also be clearly defined between the private sector and government. What do you have to say?
I think as long as both sides are okay with creation of infrastructure and wealth creation and asset creation in the process, the interests are aligned. Of late, I am seeing that the interests are not aligned because there is a lot of other interest creeping into these kind of projects, which are going beyond asset creation, infrastructure creation and wealth creation as a process. And so therefore, if the both participants' interests are not aligned to a singular goal of achieving these three objectives, you are going to fall into these kind of problems. And if you want to achieve some kind of a social upliftment through these schemes, again, that's another queer in the pitch. So I think various interests have to come together for a common minimum program, as to say, and then you can absolutely define the partnership that is you're trying to create. As I said before, I think the partnership P is the biggest problem.
Well, land acquisition has become the most crucial component for infrastructure projects. Many projects are held up and cost has increased many folds. Government is bringing a revised land acquisition bill. How effective would be the new bill in addressing the land acquisition problem?
I think we should first differentiate between land acquisition for housing, which has a profit motive, and land acquisition for infrastructure, which is a more social service situation. So I think there has to be a land bill which accommodates for profiteering out of housing and for social requirements or infrastructure requirements, which are essential services requirements, has to be treated differently. The land required in infrastructure is largely dependent on government bringing out the schemes first, and so the feasibility of that acquisition has to be done by the person who initiates the scheme. It is not like a housing scheme or something like that, where a private enterprise goes, identifies the land and then acquires it for housing purposes. The scheme in infra case is mooted by the government, envisaged by the government, and so therefore land acquisition there is not in control of private players in this regard. And so therefore there is a larger responsibility in terms of the initiator of the scheme to look at how the land will get acquired. So there is a big differentiation in infra and housing land acquisition. I think the tainted part is the housing part, and unfortunately as the government tends to do, one size fits all. I think those policies will not fit infra.
Thanks, Mr. Mundhra, for joining us in the show.